Ever notice how often we toss around the phrase picky eater? Like it's almost a given with kids, you know?
Oh, absolutely. It's practically a badge of honor in those early years.
Right. But what if I told you there's a huge bled difference between being picky and actually struggling with food? We're talking
Mhm.
about ARFID. And this research paper you sent just out this past June digs deep into it.
ARFID, so avoidant restrictive food intake disorder. Yeah, it's often totally misunderstood.
Yeah, I bet.
People hear eating disorder and their minds jump right to body image, like with anorexia.
Hmm.
But the researchers here, they really emphasize how ARFID is its own thing.
Okay, so let's break that down for folks. What sets ARFID apart from those other eating disorders we hear about?
So the DSM-5, which this paper is all about, defines ARFID as basically not getting the nutrition you need.
Mm.
But here's the thing.
The thing that makes it different.
Exactly. It's not because the food's not available, it's not about culture, and it's not just a phase during anorexia or bulimia. It's a whole separate challenge.
So it's the impact on your health, not just the food itself. That makes sense. How do you even know if someone has it then?
Well, this paper breaks down ARFID into 3 subtypes. You might find these interesting.
The subtypes definitely caught my eye. It's one thing to have a label, but to understand the WHY behind it, the how it actually shows up, that's key. So what makes each one unique?
Right, so you've got ARFID
Yeah.
with low appetite,
Yeah.
and it's not just disliking certain foods, it's like a lack of interest in food altogether.
Wow.
Even the act of eating can be tough for them.
I can see how that'd be so hard for families, especially parents trying to make sure their child's actually eating enough.
Exactly, it can be really distressing for everyone involved. Then you've got ARFID with sensory limitations. This is where someone's diet is super limited because tastes, textures, even smells, they're just too much.
This one makes me think of those super tasters, people who are so sensitive to bitter things. Their senses are just amplified when it comes to food.
Oh, that's a great comparison. Makes you realize something kind of unpleasant for us could be unbearable for them.
Okay, so 2 down. What about that third subtype?
The third one is ARFID with aversive behaviors. This is about avoiding foods because of fear or a bad experience tied to eating. Maybe they choked on something, got food poisoning, or had a really awful time vomiting, and now that fear is controlling what they eat.
Man, that's gotta be tough, especially if it comes from something traumatic. It makes you wonder, have you ever come across these subtypes in your own life? Kids, family, maybe even yourself. Food's such a big part of our lives, I feel like we can all relate to these struggles a little bit, right? So we're talking about more than just picky eating here. This is literally happening in the brain, right? What's going on in there with ARFID? This paper you sent, it mentions a 3-dimensional model to explain it all, kind of like we're putting ARFID under a microscope.
Love that.
Yeah.
And yeah, the paper does a great job making this complex stuff clear. So let's start with that sensory sensitivity piece, like you were saying before, with those super tasters.
Yeah.
It's not just pickiness, it's that their senses are way more intense when it comes to food.
So it's really real for them, not just in their heads.
Yeah, exactly. Imagine textures, smells, tastes, all dialed up to 10. No wonder trying new things is so hard.
Makes total sense. What about that second dimension, though? Inappetence. That one throws me off a bit, honestly.
It's counterintuitive, right? You think eating disorders, you think restricting food.
Right.
But here, it's more about not having that drive to eat, not being as hungry, not about body image at all. The paper talks about the hypothalamus, that part of the brain controlling hunger, maybe working differently.
So those hunger cues most of us get, they might not be there as much.
Exactly. And get this, there was this study looked at people with ARFID who were actually overweight.
Wait, hold on. Overweight? I thought ARFID meant you were underweight.
Common misconception. It's the nutritional piece that's key, not just weight. Anyway, this study found that these folks, when shown food, the reward centers in the brain lit UP.
Really? That's wild. So even if they're not hungry often, when they DO eat, some foods are extra rewarding. Man, the brain is weird.
It is, and it shows how ARFD is way more than we think.
Hmm.
Not just don't eat much, therefore thin. There's more going on.
Okay, so senses, hunger signals. What about the third one? Fear of aversive consequences. That one almost seems more, I don't know, straightforward, like bad experience, avoid the food.
Seems that way, but the brain's role is still fascinating. This paper ties it directly to anxiety, how our brains handle fear, basically.
It's like the amygdala, that fight or flight part.
Bingo. Picture it like a watchdog, always on alert. In this type of ARFID, that watchdog is on IGH alert around certain foods because it remembers a bad time. Choking, allergic reaction, whatever it was, now the amygdala is barking. even if there's no real danger.
Wow, that's a powerful image to always be afraid of food like that. It's wild how our brains work, right? Making these connections with food we don't even realize. But it makes me wonder if ARAD's this deep, how do you even know? Like, what are the signs? How's it diagnosed?
That's the million-dollar question, and this paper, it points out how much we're still figuring out. There's no one test for it, like a blood draw or something.
So someone listening who's thinking, hold on, this sounds familiar. What do they do?
If you're concerned for yourself or someone else, first step's always talking to a pro. Doctor, therapist, this paper stresses the team approach.
Not just one person, but a whole group.
Right. ARFID affects so much your body, your mind, how you socialize. You need a well-rounded approach. Ruling out other things, tailoring treatment, that's key.
Personalized care makes sense. Okay, so diagnosis happens. What then? What kinds of treatment are we talking? And is there hope? Can people get better?
There is absolutely hope. This paper talks about different methods, and it's a hot research area, so new stuff's coming out all the time. What works best, it really depends on the person and what they're dealing with.
So no easy fix, but options at least.
Exactly. One thing is nutritional intervention, getting the right nutrients, N and EW, and working on expanding what they're comfortable eating. Sometimes, in severe cases, it might mean enteral nutrition.
Enter like a feeding tube.
Yeah, but that's usually temporary, just to stabilize things, while we figure out the root cause. The goal is always getting back to eating normally.
Okay, that makes sense. So nutrition's huge, but what else? Are there other things being looked at?
Definitely. This paper talks about a couple that seem promising. One is medication, using it to target specific symptoms.
Like, are there ARFID drugs?
Not specifically, no. But doctors might use things like olanzapine or mirtazapine. Sometimes they help increase appetite or manage anxiety, which we know can be a big part of ARFAD. But we need more research on that front.
So meds can be part of it, but not the whole picture. What about therapy, though? Seems like the mental and behavioral side would need addressing.
Absolutely. Two types are showing real promise. CBT, that's cognitive behavioral therapy, and FBT, family-based treatment.
I've heard of CBT, but FBT's new to me. How do those work for ARFID specifically?
So CBT is about recognizing and changing negative thoughts and actions around food, giving people tools to cope and build a healthier relationship with eating.
Makes sense. And FBT.
That one's great, especially for younger folks. It gets the whole family involved, teaching them how to support recovery in a positive way,
Yeah.
creating that safe space to try new things, challenge those fears.
Sounds like it's all about teamwork, huh? Both inside and outside the person.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And wrapping up this deep dive, I think the biggest takeaway is awareness. The more we know about ARFID, the better we can help those struggling. Early diagnosis, personalized treatment, that's everything. With the right support and understanding, people can have a better relationship with food and thrive.
Couldn't have said it better myself. And listeners, we want to hear your thoughts. Have you or someone you know been touched by ARFID? Your stories, insights, questions, share them with us on our website. Hit us up on social media and keep those research papers coming. You never know what we'll uncover next on the deep dive.